Earlier we have discussed regarding the GSTIN number and your GSTN number and your UIN number. Okay, so and also further we have discussed the procedure for the registration. Now today we will discuss the next part of the procedure for the registration. So here is the notes which I'm sharing. So in yesterday's class, this was covered. Uh, the procedure for registration. Let's recap what we have understood yesterday, that every person has to get registered with the GST, the said the said registration names. Also, one can go for the voluntary registration using by using the GST form which is there, that is a 01. In that, everyone has to apply for the registration, whoever is liable for the registration, and also can go for the voluntary ones. Here your pan card will be validated by using the database which is available from the common portal, and that is from your CBDT. Your mobile number and your email ID will be verified through the OTP, via OTP. Then the references, how one can communicate to the applicant. So TRN number is been generated. After the generation of the TRN number, one has to look for the submission uh, part, that is which is available, the details which are available in the part B. So in that, what details exactly are there? It is regarding the uh, it is regarding the commencement of your business, composition, jurisdiction, constitution of the business, the address of the principal place of business, the address of the additional place of business, if any, the details of the authorized signatory or any Aadhaar authentications which is there. Next, now we'll discuss regarding the then this application is going to get forwarded to the proper officer, and the procedure after the receipt of the application of the proper officer, that we will be discussing now, what exactly the proper officer is going to do. So once since it's again the examination kind of thing, as you people give your examinations and this have been checked, and then you are been proceeded further. Similarly, the case and ends over here the same, the case lies the same, that is the proper officer is going to examine the applications and verify the documents which is there. Okay, so what if the whatever the said documents, everything, whatever was asked for the asked for the application form has been served, then what is to be done? So in that case, if you could see, within 7 working days, okay, within 7 working days from the date of submission of the application, this has been verified and he successfully validates his Aadhaar authentication. So again, if that is not done, okay, then he can opt for the Aadhaar authentication, or your proper officer may uh, by his skills, he will deem to fit it to carry out the verification site, and the registration will be granted within 30 days of the application after the verification and the prescribed documents verify. What if it is not found? Okay, what if it is not found? If it is not found, then the proper officer will issue a notice regarding the same electronically within the 7 working days. Everything has been checked in within the 7 working days only. So it is from the application submission date, thereby seeking the clarification of what exactly the information which you have filled into, or the document, whatever the whatever the whatever the details are there which he has found some issue regarding it, that details or that clarification he will be asking in that particular notice. So here the notice will not be extending more than 30 days. Okay, so one that proper officer has to go and immediately do whatever the actions is to be done. And also, if the Aadhaar authentication is not done, that is also to be done. He should opt for the Aadhaar authentication, or your proper officer will go for the site verification. Now, after this, okay, either there will be two or there will be two options. He will furnish the documents as it is said, or he won't be doing. So, in case if he does, let's take in a positive sense. What if the applicant has furnished the documents or the information or the details which was in a need to be known for the clarification. Again, this is to be done within the 7 working days of the from the date of notice which is sent to him. Then if your proper officer is satisfied with it, again, if he is not, then what? So if he is satisfied, let's take everything positively. If he is satisfied, then your proper officer will grant the registration certificate form. Again, that is under the registration 06 certificate. Okay. After that, is about the deem approval of the application. Okay, deem approval of the application means what? In case due to some XYZ reason, if the proper officer has not given the clarification about ki okay आपका application is authentic and you can go ahead करके, then within 30 days from the date of submission of that application, the registration part is to be granted after the physical verification of the premises of a person who fails to undergo the Aadhaar card authentication, or else he does not opt for the same, or where PO deems it fit to carry out the site verification part. Or it may be assumed that within 7 working days after the date of submission of the application, it is assumed that you're uh, approved for the registration and you will get the certificate within 7 working days. Or there will be a case that within 7 working days after getting all the clarification, the information which was required by the proper officer or the document which is to be furnished by the applicant, then the application for the grant of the registration shall be deemed to have been approved. So, in all the cases, in case where your proper officer fails to give you the notification within 7 days, okay, then it is granted to be the granted for the registration. Only for one case it is not, where there was a physical verification part, Aadhaar authentication part. Only on that grounds 30 days is allowed, and after 30 days it is to be assumed that you are granted for the registration. Yeah. Now, as I said earlier, okay, uh, that proper officer is going to examine, so there will be two options: either the details are correct or the details are not correct. And when we said if the details are not correct, then what is supposed to be done? So the proper officer issues the notices regarding it, again within 7 days. And this and this notices is to be granted within, I mean, is to be issued electronically, again within how many days? That is your 7 days. What if the no the applicant who is there does not give the clarification regarding the information or the document is which is asked for? Then again, the procedure says that the proper officer may reject for the reasons which is recorded, uh, which will be used as in recording, because he is not doing it. And what if he does? So again, a case key, the proper officer should get the correct answers. For he should be clarified. He should be clear with his doubts. So in that case, if again it is not, if the proper officer is not satisfied with the clarification which has been made, then again in that case the proper officer is going to reject the application form. And what exactly the clarification says? It will include your modification, the corrections part of the declared application for your registration, which may be other than your PAN, state, mobile, and email addresses. So this was the role of your proper officer who was supposed to examine the registration. I mean, he was supposed to examine the granting permission for the registration. Now, moving forward, now since we know that they have applied, we have discussed regarding the deemed of the registration. We have understood where and why, when one has to apply for the registration. So, and also regarding the voluntary registration. Voluntary is basically they are not liable for the registration, but they wish to get registered by themselves. We have pippin into the effective date of the registrations. Now we will move on to the amendment of the registrations. So, except for the changes in some core information in the registration application, a taxable person shall be able to make the amendments without requiring any specific approval from the tax authority. That means s- some changes which is required, like for example, the business location has been changed, so उसमें permission लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. One can go and just edit the details which is there. So no specific approval for it कि why you are changing and why you wanted to move over there. That reasons are invalid. Next, in case the change is core fields of the information, here the taxable person will apply for the amendment within 15 days of the event which is necessitating the change. The proper officer then will approve the amendment within the next 15 days. It basically says that after the amendment whatever is done, so 15 days of particular change will be required, and the proper officer will then approve them into 15 within the 15 days, because he needs to again verify the details, and they get the notifications regarding the change whatever you are doing. Next, for the changes in the in non-core fields, that is, no approval is there for the proper officer which is required, and the amendment can be affected by the taxable person on his own on the common portal. So this with regarding the amendment part of the registration. Now let's understand the cancellation or the suspension of the registration and revocation of the cancellation of registration. First, before we proceed, one needs to understand the difference between the cancellation, the word cancellation, and revocation. What is the difference? So, cancellation is basically you're going to cancel it. Revocation means canceling the cancellation part. That means whatever is cancelled, you're going to cancel it again. That means double effect. So whatever was the original, you're going to keep it. That is what the revocation says. So coming back, so cancellation is basically the registration. One second. Okay. Yeah. So the first case is where the registration can be cancelled. Okay. Either by the there will be again the two cases, that is it will be done by the proper officer, or the person himself, I mean the applicant himself, will be cancelling it. Okay, so in this case, the business which is discontinued or which is transferred, which is amalgamate with with any other legal entity, or maybe demerged, or maybe disposed of, or if there is a change in the constitution of the businesses, or the taxable person no longer is liable to be registered or intends to opt out for the voluntary registration. In that case, the cancellation part can be done. Again, the choices is in the hand of the proper officer and the applicant himself. The other case says that the registration can be cancelled by the proper officer only on his own. So, what are the cases regarding it? So, the first case says that a registered person has the contravent to prescribe regarding the provisions. A registered person has not filed the returns for continuous 6 months. 3 months is for the composition suppliers. Next is voluntary registration has not commenced the business within 6 months from the date of your registration. And next is the registration part, which was obtained earlier but is representing wrong statements, is misleading the statements, fraud is there, and there is the suppression of the facts which is uh, been observed. So on this grounds, your cancellation can be done. So one note which is one needs to understand is one person, once a registered person who has applied for the cancellation for the registration of the proper officer, who basically seeks to his cancelling his registration. The proper officer may suspend his registration due to pendency of the proceedings relating to the cancellation of the registration, which is filed by such a registered person. That means he gives time, because चलो हम बोलते हैं ना कि एक लास्ट चांस देते हैं. Similarly, proper officer gives the last chance to the people. So to sum up regarding the cancellation registration part, this is the chart. Voluntary cancellation by your registration is basically where your registration registered person has no more requires the registration. For example, in case of death of the registered person, the legal heirs can apply for the cancellation. The so motu cancellation by the department is basically the where your proper officer considers the registration of your person who is liable for the cancellation in view regarding certain defaults. So, like for example, when the registrant is not doing the businesses from the registered place of the business, or if he issues the tax invoice without making the supply of goods or the services which is there. Now, what exactly is the procedure for the cancellation? Okay, so as I said, there might be two cases. Either the registered person or the applicant himself is going to cancel, or the or the proper officer cancels by himself. Okay, so in this scenario, what exactly the procedure might be for the cancellation? Just a minute. Okay, let's continue. Uh, yeah. So if the registered person cancels by himself, then he should apply the cancellation for the same within 30 days of occurrence of that particular event of the application, and again in a prescribed form, furnishing the details regarding the inputs which is held in the stock, or the inputs which is contained in the semi-finished, finished goods which is held in the stock, and of the capital goods which is held in the stock of the date from which the cancellation of registration is sought, the liability thereon, the payment, if any, which is made, and the relevant documents regarding it. So since he has the applicant has registered for it, so here the proper officer is going to examine the same, and he shall issue the order of cancellation within 30 days of such applications for the same. And if the proper officer, the second case, if the proper officer directly cancels the registration, I guess the screen is stopped. Here, in case if the proper officer himself cancel the registration, then he has to issue a notice regarding it, the SCN, to the registered person, who has to reply to the said notice within 7 days, and further proceedings will be like he shall be dropped if again the reply is made or not. So if it is replied and it is satisfactory, then it's fine. Or where the person can opt for clarifying the or furnishing the pending returns, and making such payments along with the interests and the charges of the late fees, to not to cancel the registration by the proper officer. And this particular cancellation part which is there, the notices shall be issued within 30 days of reply to SCN, where your rights registration will be liable to be cancelled. So this was the procedure regarding the cancellation part. Now, understanding that, once it is, once you have applied for the cancellation, you want to say nay, nay, you don't want to cancel it, then what is to be done? So in case the registration is cancelled so moto by the proper officer, the taxable person can apply within 30 days. That is, it can be extendable by 30 days by additional additional or the joint commissioner, and by further 30 days by the commissioner of the service of cancellation order, requesting the officer for revoking the cancellation order by him. However, one should take a note that before applying for the revocation, the person has to make the good def- make good the defaults which is done. That is what we have seen. Ki cancellation ho raha hai by the proper officer. Then he need to give all the clarifications, or furnish the documents or furnish the returns along with the interests. Similarly, here also, if there are some defaults of the same of the said details or something, then he has to file all the pending returns, the payments, dues, the charges in case if it is applicable for him, for which the registration will be, you know, in a position कि चलो fine चलेगा करके. If it is satisfied, then the proper officer will revoke the cancellation earlier, which is ordered by him. Revoke means he is going to take back the words. Okay, here it is the letter. However, if the officer concludes to reject the request for the revocation of cancellation, he will first observe the principle of nature justice by which of issuing notice to the person and hearing him on the issue. So this was regarding the revocation of cancellation. I'm sharing you the another slide for the discussion. Now all your registration part and everything is done. So we have two type of person, if you remember, which we have already covered. That is your casual, taxable person and your non-resident taxable person. This both always falls into the compulsory registration part. Both have to go for the compulsory registration. Now, uh, the registration for the casual and the registration procedure for the non-casual taxable person that we will be discussing. Along with that, we will also discuss regarding the return filing of them. Okay, the validation part, the extension part of the registration for these persons. Okay, considering the effective date of registration, which has been discussed in our previous session. So, coming to it, uh, just recap. Okay, so that is the reason I'm sliding from the first part so that everything has been recapped by you. Format it is, it's UIN, who can apply regarding it, how it is to be registered, how the return filings can be. Then we have discussed the case also, that what one has to do. That means the seller has to do if he is registering with the, or he is supplying the goods to the person who is registered under UIN. So one has to mention the details regarding the UIN and treat as a normal supply which is there. That is your B2B supplies. The numbers part, understood and realized the difference of GSTI and that he is issuing to special bodies, and who is supposed to get registered. Correct, that every person who is basically existing once They have to, if they are pertaining to the previous law, then they have to compulsory register this year also. I mean, for the GST also. And in case if your business has been uh, merged or amalgamate, or it is transferred, or it is demerger, okay, so the transferee will be held liable for the registration with the effect from the date of transfer. Anyone who basically drives the interstate supplies also will be a part of, I mean, who needs to register. The casual taxable person, the non-resident taxable person, the person who supplies via e-commerce aggregator, or the person who supplies the online information and the database access part. So now we are going to discuss the important part, that is the special provisions which is there, which is relating to your casual taxable person and your non-resident taxable person. This we have covered. Person is not liable, compulsory, deemed registration. When and where you are supposed to apply. The effective date, very important. Procedure, already we have covered. Cancellation we have covered. Amendment we have covered. The revocation of the cancellation is also covered. Now, coming to the procedure of the registration for the casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. This is the gist of everything. Okay, so the special provisions is required for the extension period if it is required by the casual taxable person, only and only if it is required, and for all, and also for the non-resident taxable person. So, in all of the cases, CTP and your NRTP, so this one has to apply for the registration 5 days earlier only. Okay. Again, one has to take a note that only after granting the permission, they are allowed to make the, they are allowed to make the supplies. So if the registration is if the registration is granted to them, or for the period of for the period of the operation, it is extended only after they make the advance deposits of the estimated tax liability. So such advance tax should be paid to the extent of the net tax liability, that is after considering the due eligible ITC. Further, the registration is granted to them for the period which is specified in the registration, that is the application, or 90 days from the effective date of the registration. Now, for your casual taxable person, okay, so what exactly the formation goes? So your applicant, okay, your applicant will have to apply for the registration at least 5 days prior, which I have said. We are only discussing for your casual taxable person. The earlier slide was regarding the gist of both, okay, the summary of both, what you need to actually remember for it. Now, in this, one needs to take after, 5 days earlier only, they have to take the permission, at least. Okay. And one needs to know that, when they are going to apply for it, they are supposed to deposit an amount. Okay, so what is this amount? It is again, this is equivalent to the estimated tax liability for the period which he needs to supply the goods or the services which he or she is having. So she on such advanced taxes, one should pay the net tax liability, that is after considering the due eligibility for your input tax credit. So the formal form which is there is available for the casual taxable person, which is used by the normal taxpayer also, that is 01. Next, the person will have to declare his permanent account number. Okay, at the first stage, basically the procedure, what it says, that he is supposed to apply for the registration form which is there for, this is basically the normal form for the taxpayers. The same will be applicable for your casual taxable person, that is GST RNG -01. And the next step is basically declaring the details of your PAN, mobile number, and Aadhaar card. The third is the validation of your PAN card which you have submitted. This database will be, you know, gathered or taken into consideration from the CBDT part, that is your Central Board of Direct Taxes. Further step, there will be the verification of your mobile number and email addresses through uh, OTP, by sending you the OTP. Next, the generation, as I said, ki if one needs to, if the GST person needs to communicate to that particular applicant, so how they are going to communicate easily and with a systematic manner. So that is the reason they give the temporary reference number. Okay. So here the submission of application is there in part B form. Okay, that is the registration part 01. Okay, so in that one has to sign it correctly. Okay, verify those documents again through electronic medium. Whatever the documents which are specified in that particular portal, these are to be directly or through a facilitation part, is to be sent to the central which is notified by the government. In the next step, after filling the part B form also, there will be the advance deposit which is to be made. That is the equivalent amount of the estimated tax liability for the period. This estimation part I will just discuss with you further. Let's first understand the steps. Next is the issuance of the registration certificate. Only if the amount is credited to the electronic cash ledger, then and then only there will be the, only if your amount, basically what do you have been filling after part from B, that thing, that amount basically is to be verified. And not only verified, it is to be seen whether this amount has been credited to your electronic cash ledger. And then the acknowledgement part is there, which is available in your GST registration 02. So, what is the validity part of your casual taxable person? So, as per the application period which has been satisfied or which has been approved by the proper officer, at that for that particular period only the registration has been granted for it. And what if the extension is required? Now, extension for the casual taxable person basically. So one has to apply for it and then use the form that is your GST registration 011. Now here also one needs to remember that he can submit it directly or through facilitator. So, again, directly or through a facilitation, that is, your central notified by the commissioner before the end of the validity of the granted registration. So, for how many days the extension is allowed? So, maximum for the 90 days, or as per the application by the applicant for the day for the extension period, whichever is earlier will be approved by the proper officer. So now regarding the returns, we will be discussing the returns for the casual taxable person here itself only. So the form 1 of your GSTR 1, that is giving the details of the outward supplies of your goods or the services which is to be filed on or before the 10th day of the following month. And form 2, giving the details of inward supplies which is to be filed after 10th but before the 15th date of the following month. Form 3 says that after 15 days, but before the 20th day of the following month. Following matlab next month. And one should take a note that the CTP is not required to file the annual return. They have to file it for that particular period of business in which these goods and services are taxable for him. Next, in that part only, in Form 3 only, the Part B also says that they have to furnish it before the 20th day of the following month. Now, regarding the refund process. So, what refund says is that it is the balance after adjusting the tax liability. That is the excess part, which is basically the refund is basically whatever is excess, you are supposed to give that amount back. That is where it could be. It will be in the it will be in your electronic cash ledger. That is after balancing or adjusting the tax liability, the ITC part, whatever the balance is left, the excess amount has been given. And again, it is to be done in the serial number 14 of the form of your GSTR third, that is for the return purpose. And one should take a note that your refund will only be provided after all the returns are been furnished. Now the question comes, like, what if there is no excess of your tax liability, that is the advance paid falls short. Whatever you are paying that has fallen short, this might happen because the amount which we are depositing, that is in your electronic cash ledger, is the estimated amount. So it may either be more, or it may be short. It is in a rare case where the amount goes equal. So in that case, if the excess part is there, like like if taking an example, if your electronic cash ledger is having 1 lakh amount, okay, but the tax liability for you which is there has come up to 4 lakhs. Okay, so the estimation has went wrong. This is just an example which I am giving you to understand the concept. So here in this particular case, what happens? The person or the applicant is not supposed to pay the extra amount of it, the extra charges for it. He will simply have to pay the additional uh, taxes of that particular supplies which is made by him. Okay, so this is regarding your uh, casual taxable person. So since we are running short of time, it is not possible to cover the non-residential part, and I want to have that continuous flow for it. So what we will do is we will stop here for today, and for tomorrow we can continue with the non-resident taxable person, what exactly the procedure for them is to be followed, what is the uh, criteria for it, what is the extension part of it, is ITC is available for it regarding the composition scheme. Okay, for they can go for the registration, and uh, highlighting I mean in the extension, the validation part can be covered. Also, we will be discussing regarding the composition scheme and the composite taxpayer. Okay, and the details of it. So, any doubts regarding the procedure or the cancellation or deemed to be cancellation part, or I could say that any queries till now regarding the registration? Threshold limit is applicable for your uh, casual taxable person, and for non-resident taxable, threshold limit is not applicable. So I should say that you people have understood. Your silence says it. So we shall meet tomorrow and continue with the part. Thank you so much, everyone. See you tomorrow.